There you go. I got a stopwatch. I'll be brief and to the point, but I got to work the computer as well. Thank you for the intro. I am working on my second business, and my plan for the evening is to give you a little bit of overview or intro about who I am and what I do. And I'm going to tell you a tale of two companies because I'm building my second company 180 degrees opposite to the way I built my first company. And I distilled it down to sort of three key points that they're my opinions, my ideas. You can agree with, you can disagree with, you can think I'm crazy, but they've worked for me that hopefully could also work for you, or even better, you can disagree with and take it and turn it into something that does work for you. So, there. So a little bit about me. I was in credit card processing for 12 years. I built a company on internally generated cash flow, slowly over time, only growing by about 20-30% a year, to the point of we were handling 1.8 billion in transactions, 16,000 customers, and I had the fortunate opportunity to sell that company twice. I sold it to Heartland Payment Systems in 2008, which was a New York Stock Exchange listed small cap company that also was the victim of the largest credit card security breach 6 months after we sold our company to them. So that created the opportunity to take the company back, grow it over the intervening 3-4 years while the sky was falling for everybody else. We tripled our top line, quadrupled our bottom line, and sold the company to US Bank in 2013. Now, I'm going to stop there and tell you my PowerPoint, my presentation here is a little bit light because I still have some PTSD from working at a bank for 4 months. I left Collective in 2013, and like any entrepreneur, 2 months later I found myself in a new business. Has anyone here heard of, used Honk? Anyone? 2, 3, really? Who has a car? Okay, so I mean it's a decent percentage of who has a car, so at least that's something. So Honk is a mobile payment app for the parking industry. It enables users to search, find, and pay for parking. And for real estate owners, it makes the business more profitable. And I'm going to dig into why we do that just a little bit down the road. But if you haven't used Honk, or even if you have, if you use the promo code FinTechTO between now and the end of the month, you'll get $5 off your parking. So Honk has 150,000 parking spots across Canada now. We do municipalities, we do universities, we do private locations. We work with the likes of Brookfield, Starlight, RioCan, and some of the largest real estate owners in Canada, and we've just started our expansion into the States. So if you're not using it, you very well should. So I want to tell you a tale of two companies, because both in financial services, both in transaction processing, as I mentioned at the outset, grew them both very, very differently. So this company, I started with $10,000. So that is probably something that doesn't get done, and a lot of sweat equity and a lot of time and energy, and total capital consumption from beginning to end in terms of external capital that we required was not more than $600,000. So we turned this company into a profitable company to the point that we were doing 40% EBITDA margins, and we're making money hand over fist to the point that we couldn't even deploy the cash that we were making when we sold it. And a bank came calling in 2013 and made us an offer we couldn't refuse, which for everyone in FinTech, obviously we often compete with banks. You got to be careful what you wish for. They signed me to a 2-year agreement. I left after 4 months. So it was the most soul-destroying experience that an entrepreneur can ever be a part of. So careful what you wish for. Big success, it still exists, and they're just fucking it up miserably. Honk was a little bit different. Honk was when you have a success and you make a little bit of money, Instead of starting it and hitting the VC circuit at first, I was able to put my own capital towards the business. So I invested approximately $800,000 of my own money into Honk. And I wanted to get our first customers, get a viable product to market, and get proof of concept out there before I went to the market. And we did all of those things, built a team, funded it all myself, ran it the way I like to run things. And I admit that that obviously is a luxury that a lot of us probably don't have. But what I realized very quickly was, as successful as it was with the previous business, I didn't have the capital to scale this business as quickly and as large as I needed to. So I went to the marketplace, and it didn't take very long. And we put together a $3 million seed round in October of last year, and we are continuing to grow. The company's doubling in size now, roughly every 2 months. And as I mentioned, municipalities now, universities, private real estate owners, anyone who operates parking is taking a look at us. And where they may have been shy to adopt technology, thankfully, they're starting to adopt it much more quickly now. So what I found, and it's doing so these two companies totally opposite, is I found sort of three things. There's more than three things, certainly, but three things that I wanted to talk about in FinTech, and it's pretty interesting, and I can do them out of order. So where is the innovation? So a lot of people, and I do a bunch of mentoring with young entrepreneurs as well, a lot of people think innovation is technology. And certainly technology is a big source of innovation, but I would argue that the innovation is not equal technology, and that I would say that technology is an enabler of innovation. It is not the innovation of themselves. If I look back at the first business, the innovation came from desperation. Our innovation was, and it's the reason the bank bought us, it's the reason we grew, our innovation was that from a credit scoring perspective, everyone looked at a business as its proprietor, pulled the Equifax of the proprietor, and that was how they scored them. Credit card processing is somewhat like lending. There is risk in credit card processing. So they relied on personal credits and small business as the barometer for who they would do credit card processing services with. We had no money, so we said, okay, we can't afford to pay Equifax for every credit that we're going to pull. Is there a better way? And we said, let's not look at the credit score of the proprietor. Let's understand the risk profile of the business. And so we started looking at businesses, and the risk profile of the coffee shop, of the chiropractor, of the funeral home, of all of these small businesses that eventually became our customers were very slim and nil. So not only were we able to underwrite a segment of the population that wasn't getting underwritten, we were able to create an entirely new market. It was sort of the unbanked subprime of credit card processing. So we found an untapped market, untapped, untouched, higher margins, growing faster, and they were desperate for the products that we could offer. And our innovation was not our technology. We were not there trying to convince people to use credit cards, because credit cards in the mid-2000s were pretty popular. It's not that people didn't have credit cards and businesses didn't accept them. It was creating an entirely new underwriting model to facilitate that. And now it's been copied, and now it's the way that people do business. But that was totally groundbreaking thinking when we did it, and enabled us to create a market. With Honk, we went into it thinking, great, paying for parking is a pain in the ass. Who wouldn't want to pay on their phone? And we were right. The consumers love it. But the real estate owners don't care. You want to park on their land, and if you don't want to follow their rules, they're going to write you a ticket, and they're not very customer service focused. What we realized very quickly in that business is that the innovation and the problem we were solving had nothing to do with payment. It had everything to do with, if I know where you're going, and have any idea of where you're going, I can incent you to go somewhere else. I can give you an offer. I can put you in someone else's location versus someone over here. I can give you a discount over here. I can tell you where the cheapest is, where the closest is. And at the end of the day, when we started taking our message from convenience to capacity utilization, the business took off. And not only did the business take off, now we have cities, and just this week I was talking to a member of parliament about the fact that because we know where you're going, we can give you the most direct route there. So now we're talking at an even bigger level. We're talking about smart cities and reducing congestion and making traffic flow better. And a prime example of that was this year, we absolutely rocked it at Toronto's Pride Festival. We did a whole bunch of businesses tied up with Pride, and people were using us to book parking, and with all the road closures, go directly to their location because they knew where it was before they got there, and booked it, paid for it, done, goodbye. Use Waze, use Google Maps, use whatever mapping tool you want, and into the parking spot you went. So the business really took off when we saw that, hey, we're not a payment app. We're really the last mile for a mapping app. The other thing is, and I sort of mixed innovation and problem. The point I want to make here is often where you start looking at innovating, and often when you start looking at the problem you're solving, you'll either realize that there's a different problem to solve or there's a different innovation that you need to look at. So I would say be open to it, be flexible to it, and keep your eyes open for it. The final point I want to make is that sales is an answer. You know, a lot of people underestimate sales. They're technology people. They're not comfortable in sales. They think sales is an art. But the other thing that I'm learning, I'm a big subscriber to the fact that more people in more places sell more product. That overly simplifies it, certainly. But I realized early on that sales is more of a science than people give it credit for. And I would venture that anyone in this here trying to scale a business, trying to grow a business, really needs to understand their sales. Measure it, control it, throw resources at it. Sales is different than marketing. You know, definitely the person getting up to the plate 100 times and, you know, batting 200 is going to do better than someone getting up to the plate 50 times and batting 300. So start measuring, understand the funnel, understand what buyer behavior is, understand how long it takes to close a buyer, and measure it. There's plenty of tools out there. And I see too many businesses really trying to run themselves on a spreadsheet. And there's so many low-cost CRMs that'll really give you visibility into something that a lot of people don't have visibility in. And, you know, back to my first company, Honk is too new. Although we absolutely use a CRM and we measure absolutely everything that's going on. And because we deal with universities and municipalities and large organizations, often there are many people involved in the decision. There's many competing interests. There's steering committees. It's back to my bank world all over again. But thankfully, I get to go home at the end of the day. I don't have to show back up on Monday. I just have to convince them to use us. But I would say, really focus in on sales, and I feel like it's something that companies don't do enough of, and it's something that you don't end up having to go to the capital raise as often if you can sell, and people seem to like businesses with sales and revenues and margins and profits. So everything I think eventually reverts to the mean there. So absolutely, while you can sell a concept that I'm burning cash to grow and to grow rapidly, at some point those lines have to cross, and I think sales is going to be a big answer there. And so those are the few things that I've learned. I want to sort of keep this brief. As I mentioned, I'm not a big PowerPointer, so I think with there, I know beers are empty. I'm going to turn it over to questions.
questions again. Two questions. Anyone? Boom.
So, very inspiring story. Thank you for sharing. So, as an entrepreneur, what are the toughest moments that you could share from both of your ventures?
I think I'm just a glutton for punishment. I think, everyone will tell you that the toughest moment is just getting started. And for me, that's not the toughest moment. This is the early stage of business. We're in a room that celebrates it. But I mean, this is the stage of business that I happen to love. It's creative. It's exciting. There are some days where you have some great highs, and there's some days there's some great lows. The hardest thing is just to keep going, right? Like there is someone who's going to slam a door in your face, and feel you're going to come home and you're going to feel like you were kicked in the teeth all day, and then by the next day you're going to be on cloud nine. So I would say that sort of toughest thing is to just pick yourself up, go to bed, start again in the morning, and then you have beer. So don't be afraid to use it. Okay, I heard most of it. I think the question was, and correct me if I'm wrong, why, as Canadian entrepreneurs, are we afraid to go big? It's a good question. My last business, successful, never made it outside of Canada. When I started this business, I wanted to do something that at least was on both sides of the border. And in fact, we're already working on some international expansion outside of North America. It's a very good question. I think it's just a question of what you're comfortable with, what you know, fear of the unknown. Having an idea and being able to run a business and scale a business are two different things. And certainly someone, fresh out of school, like to scale a business, to pull off what Mark Zuckerberg has done, or, what the Google folks have done is not the easiest thing in the world. It's the reason they're on the front page of every newspaper. So I think that's it. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think there's businesses that can exist strictly Canada-wide and be successful. But I actually think that, that's just depends on the founder. I don't think it's systemic. I think it really depends on the people. And I think with experience, you see people shooting a lot bigger than with inexperience. That's been my experience, at least.
Thank you. And if you have any more questions, you'll be able to find Michael near the beer.